Hello everyone, welcome back to Major Hi-Fi. I'm Luke. Today we have a brand new IEM from Campfire Audio. This is the Honeydew. So Campfire has been expanding their price range here and there. They do have a lot of IEMs that are in the more expensive area, you know, 1,000 plus, but they do have some that are a fair amount below that. So we have like the IO that's $299. And this is $249, so this is going to be another addition to their somewhat more affordable IEMs. So I was very curious to see how this would sound because I've heard a lot of higher end IEMs from Campfire, but I haven't heard nearly as many more moderately priced IEMs from them. And so, you know, that can go really either way with a company that has a lot of experience making those, you know, really luxury earphones and whatnot. When they try to go lower price, some of them can pull it off and some of them sort of just don't know how to be more resourceful. So I was quite curious to see how these would sound, and yeah, let's get into it. All right, so if I open this up, it's pretty simple stuff, though the packaging is very cool, per usual. The Campfire packaging, very pretty. And just inside we get, you know, carrying case for the IEMs and then a variety of different ear tips, and that's it. But per usual, that's kind of all we need, right? So that's fine. But here's the IEMs. I like that they come extra protected in these drawstring bags, and the ear tips come in the same bags too. And if we take these out, they have a really fun look to them. So we have this bright yellowy orange color, hence the name Honeydew. And yeah, definitely pretty, you know, stand out look, but I like it. I think they're really cute and it feels very summery for those of us that are, you know, in summer seasons right now. They do a good job of not looking cheap with this sort of glossier outer coat on them, because yellow can sometimes look tacky if you don't really, you know, choose the right shade or darken it enough. So I appreciate that it's more subtle shaded yellow, at least to some extent. And yeah, will the color be for everyone? Probably not. I know there's some people that don't like bright colors, but I feel like these are nice. I enjoy, you know, a nice loud statement on these things. You know, they're not too big anyway, so you might as well make what impression you can with what space you have, right? So these have a similar fit to many of Campfire's IEMs. We have this more geometric shape that's sort of made to not rub up against your ears too much, with the nice sort of slightly rounded edges. And of course we get the very sturdy shell and very lightweight build overall. These use custom-built 10mm LCP diaphragm dynamic drivers and have a beryllium copper MMCX cable. Their sound comes out of a stainless steel spout, and each one of these is actually hand assembled in Portland, Oregon. And these have an impedance of 17.44 ohms and a frequency response of 5 Hz to 18 kHz. Okay, so let's talk about how these sound. I found the tuning on these quite interesting because a lot of the IEMs I reviewed recently and just in general have a very neutral sound that can be a bit difficult to describe at times. These are an IEM that definitely has a bit of an easier to describe sound. It's very particular, and I think that the people who are going to be into it will know pretty quickly when I start getting into what this sounds like, because it's definitely got a pretty specific tuning to it, but it is good at what it does. But I do want to make sure I'm clear on what this IEM does and who it's right for. So Campfire is kind of aiming this at DJs, electronic artists, bassists, or people who listen to electronic dance music, pop music, hip hop. So very modern kind of bass heavy applications. And let me tell you, that makes a lot of sense when you listen to these, because they have very boosted low end. So Campfire does cite these as having an enhanced low end. I would say that enhanced is an understatement. It's big, and it's the first thing you'll notice is that these are just super heavy in the bass area. It's pretty impressive how they avoid being muddy considering how strong the bass response is. Like, it's still very controlled and cleaned up, but it's big. Like, it's a lot of bass from these for sure. So unsurprisingly, a very percussive sounding IEM, and there's a big focus on the sub range, a lot of that sub frequency, and on upwards in the low end spectrum. So if you want, you know, the bassiest IEM possible, there's probably a bassier one out there, but you're gonna have trouble in this price range maybe finding one that's got quite the firepower that the Honeydew does. So I would recommend these to people who are big fans of a strong low end, or if you're not, people who are okay with one, you know, maybe you're neutral on whether or not they want a lot of low end. It is a really well conveyed low end, but it's big. So, you know, kick drums, bass sounds, all that are gonna be super prominent. Hey guys, Luke here. Just wanted to pop in and say that if you're enjoying this video, it would be great if you could subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when we make new content, and hit the like button and leave us a comment if you have any suggestions or questions or anything like that. I would love to talk to you guys more. We would really love some help growing the channel, and just want to make sure that we're reaching our audience and whatnot. So yeah, any support is greatly appreciated, and let's get back to the review. So the low end definitely leaves the rest of the frequency spectrum with a pretty intimidating foundation to build upon. So unsurprisingly, the mid-range is a little bit subdued, kind of to make sure that there's room for all of that bass response, and also that it's just not an overly crowded, tuning and frequency response. The high mid is definitely a fair amount more subdued than the low mid, which makes the low mid feel almost pushed forward by contrast. And this also means that any sense of harshness, any sense of resonance is like not just tamed, it's gone, It does make for an extremely, extremely warm sound, but in terms of getting that kind of intense high-mid vocal presence, maybe not the best IEM for that. It still conveys the vocal. They're gonna have room to come through, but they're gonna be on top of this big bass response, and they're definitely going to be taking a backseat to kind of the warmer frequencies. So maybe lower voices or more vintage recordings might come across differently, but those sort of higher falsettos and whatnot might not be quite as present and forward on these than they might be on another IEM. So definitely overall a dampened mid-range, but still a fair amount of detail. If you want that heightened articulation, maybe not the best place to look, because that normally is paired with a boosted mid-range to make sure that everything's cutting through a lot. These do retrieve the detail, but they present it, like I said, in this very subdued package. So just be mindful of that if you're into these. But once again, it's not like a bad thing, it's just a particular sound, like I've been saying. It's particular, and I think a lot of people are gonna love it, but it needs to, float your boat, basically. In terms of high end, these are very dark. This was also one of the first things I noticed about these. I will say, in terms of dark IEMs, or just any sound signature, it's good to be mindful of the fact that your ears are going to adjust to however the sound is, and it's not going to sound quite the same, of course, as it does, your first few listens. So I was listening to, I forget what, but a much brighter IEM, and then I tried these out, a few minutes afterwards, and I was at first like, wow, these are so dark, they're too dark. But then after 15 minutes of listening, I was like, no, this actually works. This actually really works with the tuning. So your ears do adjust quickly and they don't feel overly dark, but if you're used to a brighter sound, it might be a little bit of a shock to the system, but you'll adjust and then you'll actually maybe come to appreciate that more understated high end. I'm someone who really seeks out extreme crispness, so I'm very averse to that more rolled off high end, but these kind of sold me on it, at least in this case, which I was surprised by. If you're someone who's constantly bothered by too much high end, you can't seem to find an IEM that doesn't feel too bright for you, then these might finally satisfy your need for an ample level of darkness. And this high end response also does a good job of knocking down harsh recordings a few notches. So I get why they're kind of aimed towards hip hop, pop, electronic, DJs, bassists, whatever. Things that need the bass pushed forward, but the high end might just be a bit too bright on the mix. A lot of electronic music, of modern music, pop music is absurdly bright, huge boost on the high end. And this one will ensure that you don't get any of that harshness at all, which is great if you're listening to those genres. I might not recommend this for naturally already darker sounding songs, though it could be a cool sound, honestly, but definitely for those brighter mixes, it does a great job of kind of shaving off that overly harsh edge. And then in terms of Soundstage, I often talk about this first, but in this video I wanted to talk about it later because the frequency response on these felt like the more important part. The Soundstage to me was good. Any low-end heavy IEM, I find the Soundstage is going to be a little bit limited by how much bass you're getting. But for the way that these are tuned, the Soundstage is very impressive in that it doesn't get lost in that kind of darker, bassier sound. It doesn't feel muffled or, like I said, crowded. I would say it's fairly expansive. Definitely there are wider IEMs from Campfire, but you don't really feel robbed of the width here because you're getting a lot of just warmth and intensity sort of all around. So I don't feel like it's meant to be this super kind of light and airy sound. It's definitely trying to take advantage of those heavier, harder hitting frequencies. Those do tend to be towards the middle. But yeah, with wider mixes, it handles them very well, but we're gonna get that same tuning and kind of boosting of the same areas, which I don't feel like are typically the go-to for a super hyper holographic sound. But in terms of a darker, bassier IEM, their soundstage and imaging capabilities are definitely very on par with other Campfire audio IEMs, which I appreciated a lot. And I think overall, there's just a lot of listeners who these will make a ton of sense to and will just really click with, you know? Overall, the Honeydew feels like a very successful IEM at what it does. It accomplishes its mission very well. There's a lot of very bass hungry people out there who are never satisfied, and I think this might finally be enough bass for some people that feel like they're constantly chasing more. And I also think that this will be great for certain live applications, like DJs who need the sound to cut through, you know, when there's a loud club system going on, or bassists who want to have their low end, you know, sound featured and while they're performing and whatnot. Just anyone who wants that boosted low end and needs the high end and mid range to be present and, you know, noticeable but not overpowering and letting the low end shine through. These are going to do that really well, in addition to cutting down, like I said, the harshness of a lot of those really modern, bright mixed recordings. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the Honeydew. If you'd like to compare these to many other IEMs from Campfire or in the same price range or above or below, you can check out the IEM ranking tool on Major Hi-Fi. I'll link to that too. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them. I'd be happy to answer. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you soon and happy listening. Whoops.